I mentioned earlier in today's show an actual example of the government being weaponized by Trump when he was president. And it's interesting because we're hearing over and over again that it's the Democratic Party, it's Joe Biden that's weaponizing the government against conservatives. And there's no evidence for that, but they go along with it. And often they're now using that premise to justify promises or actions with the weaponization subcommittee to actually weaponize their positions of power against their political enemies, which is pretty stunning. And now I have a past example that they're not going to care about. The weaponization subcommittee is not going to be up in arms about this, about Trump actually wanting to weaponize his IRS for political purposes against his opponents, against those he felt were wronging him in some way. And we'll dive into some reporting on this. We've heard things kind of here and there, but now there's a formal court filing that outlines this. But it's interesting because there's a specific conspiracy right now about the 87,000 IRS agents. What's referring to is the extra funding going towards the IRS that's aimed at giving the IRS the resources it needs to go after wealthy tax cheats, because you need more resources to make that happen. The IRS makes a profit, so we're allocating money and making the government profit because of that, because they get a lot of tax revenue that they want to have otherwise. It's people who should be paying taxes by law, but they're not, and they're wealthy so they can afford it for sure. Why wouldn't we want to do that? But they've twisted it, the Republican Party has, to be this narrative that Biden actually is giving these extra bits of funding to the IRS to go after conservatives or something. And that's exactly what Trump did, but in reverse, not with liberals, but with people he felt were wrongly investigating him. Take a look at this from the New York Times. Trump asked about IRS inquiry of FBI officials, ex-aide says under oath. John F. Kelly, who served as former President Donald J. Trump's second White House chief of staff, said in a sworn statement that Mr. Trump had discussed having the Internal Revenue Service and other federal agencies investigate two FBI officials involved in the investigation into his campaign's ties to Russia. So he hated that they were investigating him, and he's thinking, what if the IRS gave him a little trouble? Mr. Kelly said that his recollection of Mr. Trump's comments to him was based on notes that he had taken at the time in 2018. Mr. Kelly provided copies of his notes to lawyers for one of the FBI officials who made the sworn statement public in a court filing. And as to why this is coming up now, Mr. Kelly's assertions were disclosed on Thursday in a statement that was filed in connection with lawsuits brought by Peter Strzok, who was the lead agent in the FBI's Russia investigation, and Lisa Page, a former lawyer in the Bureau, against the Justice Department for violating their privacy rights when the Trump administration made public text messages between them. So based on this lawsuit, this information is being disclosed. And I want to read a little bit from this lawsuit. President Trump questioned whether investigations by the Internal Revenue Service or other federal agencies should be undertaken into Mr. Strzok and or Miss Page. Mr. Kelly said in the statement, I do not know of President Trump ordering such an investigation. It appeared, however, that he wanted to see Mr. Strzok and Miss Page investigated. So blurry as to if he said, all right, go investigate, because that's explicitly against the law. As is noted in this article here, in the aftermath of Nixon's presidency, Congress made it illegal to directly or indirectly order an IRS investigation or audit. But as the article continues, the New York Times reported last July that two of Mr. Trump's greatest perceived enemies, James B. Comey, who he fired as FBI director, and Mr. Comey's deputy, Andrew G. McCabe, were the subject of the same type of highly unusual and invasive IRS audit. So, some coincidences there for sure, as has been previously reported, and we're not sure if they actually ended up getting investigated by the IRS. So here you have Trump, who's going, I really wish they would be investigated by the IRS. We don't know if he formally ordered that, because again, if that was on the record, that would be explicitly against the law based on what was implemented into the law after the Nixon administration. But we do know two of his other enemies just happened to have unusual audits from the IRS during a period of time there. And now we know behind the scenes he was hoping for that, talking about it, wanting it with people in his administration. Is that concerning to the right wing? Is that weaponization? No, not at all. And it's yet another example of how a lot of times these accusations from MAGA are sort of confessions about what they want to do or have done. And Trump, that's definitely the case. He's right now running, saying that he wants to weaponize the government against Biden. He's saying as president, he's going to try to figure out a way to lock up Biden. And then the crowd chants, lock up Biden. And then next sentence is, and isn't it terrible that the left is hoping for the political enemies to be locked up and Biden's weaponizing the government, even though it's not happening? The Biden weaponizing part, I'm sure there's lots of lefties who are dreaming about Trump in jail. And if he has due process and it goes to that end, I'm not going to be sad, I'll say, but I do want due process to play out. And there seems to be lots of evidence that would justify him being locked up, but he is promising to try to do the exact thing he's saying is being done to him, to Biden. Absurd, dishonest, hypocritical, all those things, but we're very accustomed to that now with MAGA and with Trump in particular. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That is lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.